How do you start thinking like a millionaire before you actually become one? Up until I was 30, I lived like most people. I worked, earned money, saved up a bit. But I constantly felt like, deep down, I was trapped. I wasn't poor, I wasn't stupid, I wasn't lazy, but it always felt like I was one step behind. It didn't matter how much money came in. It felt like real life was happening somewhere nearby, but I just didn't fit into it. I thought the problem was with the tools. I looked for new skills, read books on time management, watched interviews with entrepreneurs. But at some point, I realized for them, it's not about knowledge, it's about their approach, about how they think. I first came across Napoleon Hill's ideas when someone sent me a quote. Thoughts are things. And honestly, at first it seemed kind of cliche. But then I started reading more deeply. It wasn't just motivation, it was the essence. And that's when it really got interesting. He's not about wealth as a goal, he's about the fact that wealth is a consequence. That external reality is a reflection of how you think on the inside. Not just what you dream about, but how you mentally live right now. And that completely changed my perspective. I realized that before more opportunities show up in your life, you first have to become the kind of person inside who knows how to handle them. And it's not just pretty words, it's real mental discipline. It's the habit of thinking in terms of solutions, not problems. The habit of asking yourself the right questions. And most importantly, to stop living with a sense of lack and start acting from a state where you're already capable of creating. When you start looking at the world not through the lens of how do I survive, but through what can I build, you automatically move differently. You gain energy because you're no longer wasting it on doubts. You start thinking like someone who already has the result. Not because you're pretending, but because inside you've already decided who you want to become. Hill has a simple but powerful idea. You can't live a life that goes against your deepest beliefs. If in your mind you still think that money is hard, that you won't make it, that rich people are a completely different breed, you'll unconsciously sabotage every step forward. I've been through this many times already. There were times when I seemed to be doing everything right. I started a channel, launched projects, and even started making decent money. But inside, there was still anxiety. What if it all falls apart? What if I can't handle it? And until I admitted this, until I started seriously working on myself, my growth was limited. And that's exactly why Napoleon Hill insists on this. The work doesn't start on the outside, but on the inside. I started small, just paying attention to what thoughts were spinning in my head throughout the day. What am I thinking about in the morning? What do I feel when I go to a meeting or start a new project? I started to notice how many of these thoughts were filled with doubt, fear, attempts to protect myself, and how many were filled with confidence, intention, and moving toward my goal. Gradually, I began to shift my focus. Instead of thinking about how not to mess up, I started asking myself, what would someone who already has the result I want do? How would they react? How would they make decisions? And you might be surprised, but even just this shift in thinking starts to change your behavior. And behavior is what ultimately builds the result. When I started surrounding myself with people who don't complain but take action, a lot of things fell into place. They had a different mindset. They weren't chasing money, they were creating. They didn't ask, can I allow myself this? But decided, how am I going to make this happen? And it's contagious. Napoleon Hill teaches, first you change your mindset, and only then does everything else change. You don't wait for results in order to believe. First you believe, and you act as if you already have them. You don't need to wait for the right moment, for approval, or for confidence to appear. Everything starts with a decision right now. So if you want to grow, start thinking like the person who has already achieved what you want. Live, make decisions, and speak from that position, because that's the main shift. You don't become a millionaire later. First, you start thinking like a millionaire, and the rest follows. Support the video with a like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and be sure to subscribe. There will be many more videos about money.